Hello, all you fine feathered individuals. We have returned to League of Aaron and Mark here with you guys, as always, as we continue the countdown of LCS Power Rankings preseason for the summer split. And Mark, you just said coming into these top five, at the very least, you want to watch the games that these guys are playing. That's the standard we're going for.
That's got to be good enough from some North American fans, because you know what? We've set our sights higher. We've had higher expectations or wanting more and trying to hype it up. And then we've realized it's not the case. And especially not when we're having 8 teams from North America in the playoffs. You can't say every playoff team is a reason to get excited that you want to watch these matches. These 5, though, I will put myself on the line and say, yep, I'm excited for these 5 heading into this summer split.
When you have 8 teams, you don't have 8 playoff teams. They're not playoff caliber. It doesn't matter whether they're going to playoffs or not. But you start with number 5, and this is the expectation breaker from last spring, because most people, us included, had Dignitas bottom 3. They obviously shattered those expectations. Neo had an incredible debut split. Dardoch looked back into form from a couple of years ago at this point. So did Afromu. Fake God and Soligo continue to develop. And the reason I wanted to put these guys ahead of Evil Geniuses, even though they had a pretty terrible 0-3 loss to 100 Thieves to close out the split, is we still don't know what the ceiling is for Neo, Soligo, or Fake God.
Yeah, and especially when you combine it all together, right? And you want to talk about the Dignitas team as a whole that is going to benefit. It's going to flow up and down in the standings based on the progression, based on the level of effort that's put out by specifically all 5, but especially those 3 core members, the young members that are about the future, that are about getting experience, learning things, and then putting it out on the Rift and doing better. That's what we're going to be looking at with Dignitas. As you said, the big one is, no, you're not going to be under the radar this split. Everybody knows that you are a team that is going to be contending, that is going to put a challenge through. And it's, certainly you can have some blame on some of the squads in North America, maybe not adapting to that early enough in the splits, seeing that effort, seeing what and how aggressive they were able to play Dignitas. That's not going to be the case in summer. Everyone's going to know that you're coming, and they know that they need to be prepared or need to put a level of respect on some of your players. And that's going to bring a whole nother level of preparation that Dignitas themselves need to bring to the table to step it up for summer.
And we praised Dardoch's crazy champion pool, the team playing around him last split. How's he going to fit in with this new jungle meta with all these AP carry type junglers?
We've seen him adapt to the Karthus, things of that nature before have been things we've liked to see from him. But I think that this will be a new venture, a new batch of champions that we get to see Dardoch put out. And I've got faith that he will be able to pilot them. But again, he is someone that is, more so one of the veteran players on this roster. And this next step, this next level of expectations and preparation that will be put towards this team and needs to be put forth to continue to contend and push up in the standings, you're going to have to put a lot of that responsibility on a veteran player like Dardoch, like Afromu in the bottom lane.
And I love the evolution of this game, because I recently played with someone who hasn't played in many years, and just telling them what's really good in the jungle. Well, obviously it's Rumble, Morgana, and Udyr are kind of the big 3, and it's, are you trolling? If you told people that 3 years ago, they wouldn't believe you.
Yeah, Udyr, they would get that name. But other than that, it is a different world, absolutely. And that should continue in the meta of what champions we're going to see being very strong and being picked around right into the LCS starting up. And I don't see that changing within the first weeks or so, given what we know about the patches. Going to have to be able to adapt, and that's what we're going to have to see if Dignitas is able to provide that and able to get onto these different looks from what we had in the spring.
They seem like the perfect blend of young talent and the veterans with Dardoch and Afro, as you mentioned. So excited to hopefully see some growth from the tough end to the spring split that we saw out of Dignitas into that number 4 spot. And, honestly, Dignitas overachieved in a big way. I think what people were expecting. In the regular season, at the very least, I'm going to say TSM might have overperformed a little. People can say what you want about the playoff run, but I think initially hit the ground running. TSM looked better quicker than people would have thought.
We had, of course, the debut. I can't even remember the name of it. Kind of whatever kickoff that we
Lock-in
had.
tournament.
There it is, the lock-in tournament, and we had TSM kind of fumbling their way through, and everybody getting ready. We're just coming off 0-6. The speed run at the airport. Everyone's ready to dumpster TSM in this
Entirely new team, basically.
new million dollar roster coming through. And then, as you said, overachieving. Well, yeah, they kind of put it together a lot faster than was expected, and almost easier is the way that you want to put it against the competition that should have been from the LCS, should have been from some of these top teams that you would hope for. But that's not what you're asking with TSM. They're asking if they're putting the wins in the column, and they were for the spring split. When you look towards summer and you're talking about, overachieving a little bit, that's where we start talking about, well, what else can you get from this roster, right? What you achieved, what you were doing well, the positives, the negatives in spring. And do you see any avenue for that to change, improve, get better, all these type of things? And you start talking about aspects of the team. And one for me, right out of the gate specifically, is that top lane of Huni, where, yes, we talked about Huni over Hanser and getting the maximum value and what player like Huni can provide. Sure, that doesn't mean that there's not after effects, that there's going to be some downsides. And we absolutely saw that against Team Liquid in the playoffs up against a beast like Alfari. And I promise you, TSM, a summer away, that's not getting any better. That's going to be an issue come back around.
Yeah, I just feel like you talk about, Saligo, Neo, and Fake God, and just said, don't know what the ceiling is fully for them. I feel like most of the players on TSM, you kind of know what Huni's ceiling is, and to be honest, he hasn't quite reached that peak, which was incredibly high in world class, by the way. But I don't know if he's going to be able to get back to that point. I don't know if this is the best that we'll see of TSM throughout the whole year. I'm not confident that they're going to grow an incredible amount in this split break and then be even better in summer.
I think it is important, even with TSM and even with the veterans, the majority veterans on this roster, to have that, to allow them, to give them that credit for, expansion, for growth, for learning that potential, because that's still there with this roster. When you're talking about some of the players on it, Spica, his talent needs to continue to develop, his career and growth, everything in that regard.
And he's still very young.
And he is. Lost specifically down in the bottom lane is someone that showed massive growth, massive progress throughout that split, let alone in his own skill, but alongside being partnered with and gelling alongside the big, $6 million support and Sword Art here. And that is going to be a big difference as well. That continued progression, not only as a duo, but as an individual for Lost, with the spotlight on him as, lesser of a name in that bottom lane.
Yeah, and Lost and Spica are the guys who I think can grow and reach levels that we haven't seen them get to yet. So if they do that, then maybe you can talk about TSM in that top 3 category. But for now, I mean, you only had to look at both playoff series against Team Liquid to see they were a clear cut below that very top in NA.
Yeah, and the last thing that I want to touch on with TSM and the growth, the potential that needs to be there, the next steps, what's going to happen, everything else. Another thing that is important to keep track of with TSM, of course, is the coaching staff. Talking about Bjergsen, the Burger King behind the bench now, doing the coaching job. And yes, not immune to criticism and mistakes and some things
there
going
were some
wrong.
Fun drafts, we'll call them.
Absolutely. And at the same time, there were some that came through that worked out fantastic. There were avenues of him talking to certain players on TSM that right away you can see that impact, that respect, what it means to have someone like Bjergsen, his career, his knowledge, everything like that, talking to you from a coach perspective. So you absolutely have to allow, let alone that growth, that learning, that experience, that progress to still go on for someone like Bjergsen in a coaching role specifically, but then apply it to the rest of the team as well and how he's going to interact with them. That whole thing is still a progress, still something that needs to be worked on for TSM and allowed, given that breadth, that freedom to make that type of growth.
Still probably the most respected coach in the LCS, probably just because of what he accomplished as a career, as a player, and tons of these guys watched his games and looked up to him to start becoming professional players. Now we're into that top 3 where we finally get the biggest off-season moves that we had in the LCS at the very least. We are talking 100 Thieves, who we were hyped on the Golden Guardian guys coming over last split, heading into spring. I think we still had them third, and even though they flamed out a little bit at the end of the split, but with Abadage coming in, that is an immediate, I'm going to call it a massive upgrade over Ryoma or Damonte, which was clearly at times the weakest point for 100 Thieves, and you combine that with getting Reapered as the head coach, I can't put this team lower than 3.
I want to talk to the people that have been burned, that feel like they've been, they've tried to buy in on the hype, on the excitement for 100 Thieves at various points in their, entry, their birth into the LCS. It doesn't work out. It doesn't go to the extreme levels that had been hyped up towards. And the move with the Golden Guardians roster, yeah, it more or less flamed out to some regard. And absolutely, you can have some criticisms for that in the first place. And then as well, with 100 Thieves and the way that they handled it moving forward and everything else, sure. But at the end of the day, when you look at this 100 Thieves roster, what choices they made, the moves that they had this offseason, there is no way that you can't have them in this position in the LCS power rankings. Exactly. There's, you can, as we've talked many times, we're all in favor. We're big time on the Damonte train. We're big fans of getting NA Town, trying to push through in all these type of situations.
Abadage?
You can get an Abadage. You got Nate Shot willing to loosen up the purse strings and put some cash down for an Abadage or Reaper as your coach. These are changes that I think anybody in the LCS scene and anybody that's been watching internationally to see Abadage play should absolutely be convinced and sold on by the 100 Thieves and this little bit of a revamp here for summer.
And of course, the reason they can make way for Abadage is someday just another NA resident, NA born and classic domestic NA. It's crazy that he's been here for 4 years.
When you think North American top lane, you're thinking about Huni, you're thinking about Someday, you're thinking about Impact.
We're bringing all the big hitters there, it is just crazy that he's actually been playing in the LCS for 4 years as Someday, and this is, I feel like we've said this a few splits in a row now, but this is the best team with Abadage coming in, the best team Someday has ever had in North America.
And I think even more important when we talk about best teams for Someday and everything else and how it's gelled through, the differences in the play styles and how they would interact with the rest of the members. When you're talking about changing from any of them, Damonte, Ryoma, whoever you wanted, from anybody that he's played with in the mid lane, the level of caliber that you're getting with Abadage is a very, very different degree. And that one is absolutely, I think, going to bring out a lot of different situations on the map for 100 Thieves and different situations of pressure that someone has not had to face or not been lucky enough to go up against in previous years, given how much of a threat he has immediately seemed to other teams.
Yeah, and I think Someday individually probably underperformed a little bit in spring, but with Abadage coming in, it felt like before 100 Thieves were just trying to survive mid lane with either Ryoma or Damonte. With Abadage now, Closer has a clear lane that he can play through and be a focal point for them in wins.
And yes, there needs to be, some cushion, some allowing for some mistakes to happen, whether that's Abadage himself or talking about someone like Closer, where you have to have, that synergy developed, everything like that as a partnership is very important to allow some time. But it still is one of those situations where if you're making these moves for Abadage, you're bringing on Reaper, you've got Someday signing on as a resident. You got to be making moves. You got to be making waves in the LCS and pushing up into that top category. This is not where you can just, tread water around 4, 5, 6. This is the time. This is the money invested. It's put up or shut up. Again, for the 100 Thieves, let's get it done, boys.
They're top 3 on the power rankings. I think it's fair to say it's probably Worlds or a disappointing season. That's the result you want if you're a fan of 100 Thieves or any of the players on 100 Thieves. Same goes for probably these other 2 teams in the power rankings. And in that number 2 spot, we have the runners-up from the spring split, Team Liquid. The crew is coming back, and the coaching staff looks to all be in place still. No real changes, and they didn't need to make changes because, Mark, we seem to forget they got to Game 5 of the finals against Cloud9. They beat TSM with a substitute jungler.
And there's no way that any, if not every single member, I'm not even talking about just the players, I'm talking about the guys that are not even playing League of Legends on the Team Liquid roster, the staff, everything involved in that organization. You cannot have seen what happened at MSI and be okay and sit here and go, you know what? We could, that's exactly what we would have done. You're looking at these situations of Cloud9, able to contend with a damn one, able to push RNG, able to take down the Mad Lions, all these type of situations. And you go, yeah, but we can contend with Cloud9. We should be able to do that on the international stage. And then you see the inconsistencies. Some of the mistakes come through from Cloud9. And you realize with the Team Liquid roster that we've talked about, I hyped them up all the way and the way they perform. I don't have worries about consistency and performance and levels from them. And that has to be the big key for them, the big kick in the pants for this summer split, is to realize we were so close with everything stacked against us to get that ticket to MSI, to be the ones representing and pushing forward. But it wasn't us, and we had to watch it, and we now have to be the ones to try and regroup and get through. This is a Team Liquid team that should find no shortage of motivation.
Yeah, and I mean, with Alfari and Core JJ, which are absolutely world-class players in their respective roles, without a doubt, in my mind, with Santora not playing in the biggest playoff series, and to be honest, Tactical seeming to be in a little bit of a sophomore slump of some type, and Team Liquid still had as good a season as they did. They were dominant across most of the main statistical categories in the LCS. You should be excited if you're a Team Liquid fan, because this is a team that I think you could have. Now, I say faith. Faith in an NA team is much different than anything else, but a team you're comfortable with sending to Worlds.
And you want to talk sophomore slumps with Tactical? I'll take the risk full on right here. I'll be on the line for this one. I will go out and say there's no sophomore slump for summer. I think that one is done and dusted by the time we're hitting the Rift in a week, in about 9 days, I think it is right now. What will be from Tactical? Yes, because, you know, a couple times on that Tristana, yeah.
Yeah, just get the Trist out. Get the Trist out. You're good.
Those W's are certainly wonky, and not even just wonky by, oh, that's a mistake. It's wonky as in, are you actually trying to get yourself killed here, my man, is what we were seeing. But all the other performances, when it mattered most, the crucial clutch moments, he was there for Team Liquid. He was there in the big moments that mattered in those playoff games. That skill is still there. That killer instinct absolutely is there. And alongside Core JJ, as I said, with this time off between spring and summer, I've got no doubts that things will be corrected and the course will be reset for Tactical.
Two legit MVP candidates, a hopefully bounce back performance from Tactical, a healthy Santorin. It's mainly up to Jensen at that point to really be able to keep up and play at the same level as the rest of his squad. Team Liquid in at number 2. Despite what happened at MSI, you have the belief, the positive of Fudge playing out of his mind against international competition, the winners of the spring split. Even though, again, it was a sub-jungler for Team Liquid, you still got to have Cloud9 at number 1.
I hope everyone's seen the very first Captain America, the first Avenger. You know, he goes in that tube and he's a little scrawny boy and he comes out all jacked up like Captain America. That was Fudge.
It's our boy
heading
Fudge.
to MSI. Fudge went to MSI, the scrawny boy at the tube, and he comes back all jacked up, Lee Sin taking down the LPL, taking down the LCK, taking down the LCS.
Ready to stomp.
Exactly. Yeah, so Fudge is back. Fudge is ready to go, and expectations should be different for Fudge specifically. For Cloud9, the exact same expectation. You win. You should be the best of this region, if not at the very top. There's going to be a lot of pressure and attention towards this Cloud9 now to especially dominate domestically back home. That is certainly going to be a demand from a lot of people, a lot of internationalized specifically, that feel like they didn't quite get the full Cloud9 treatment despite some of these victories against the regions. And they'd be right, because that consistency, some of these errors that we saw at MSI, there can be absolutely no sight of them here in North America to have that level of faith, to be that level of a buy-in again when you're heading towards international event for Worlds.
I really hope it's because we missed out on it in 2020. I hope that it's a case of Cloud9 has learned a lot, even though they didn't make the knockouts. They come back to MSI and they raise the level of the entire region that is the LCS. I'm hoping that's the case. And for guys like Blabber, Perks, and Sven, these are three guys who I think have never lacked confidence in their professional careers, but coming back to the LCS and being able to beat up on lower level competition compared to MSI, where it's all champions, I think that's going to help them absolutely come back to North America. It's a little more slower pace. You're like, okay, we can make mistakes and learn from them as we go and still, win the split.
Fred should be stepping up to any opponent here in North America and not feeling like he's going up against a Dark Souls boss on the other side anymore. Then that's not the situation. You're strong enough in your own regard, my man. We got something there. As you said, I think when you're looking at Cloud9 and talking about the confidence of these players and what we can gain from seeing from them, for me, the really big one coming off of this MSI, there has to be some type of just unbelievably undoubtable performances from Blabber for me to really put that significant point on him anymore, because even if it's, again, the same level of dominance that has led to him winning MVP trophies here in the LCS, well, what level of confidence does that give you in Cloud9 or his performances internationally moving forward?
If he wins an MVP in summer and then Cloud9 goes to Worlds and he has another underwhelming performance, that's
crabs. Come on, they can't be having that.
That's not a good look for him. But also, one thing that we didn't really touch on, coaching staff wise, is Rainover wasn't really there for MSI. It was mostly remote. That's a terrible excuse because Tabe had the same thing for RNG and they won the whole event. But it will be nice for them to have their head coach back.
Absolutely, yes. As you alluded to, can't really be making excuses in that type of situation, but certainly is something that does have an impact. So getting them back in the overall play will help with the squad, having the coaching staff and everything in that regard. It can't hurt, is the way to look at it. The rebound needs to be incredibly strong from Cloud9, not only domestically, but eventually when they get a chance to prove internationally. But there are members of this team that did prove themselves well at MSI, and there does need to be some allowance from the community to take that next step from everything from MSI, right? To take those lessons, to make that mistake at MSI and have a chance of redemption, to learn all these type of things do need to be allowed, even to a team like Cloud9, even to players like Perks, like Sven, more veteran players or even more outspoken players. If you might not want to, they still need to be allowed that.
You might not necessarily want stomps. You don't want Cloud9 to come in and completely obliterate the competition, not even be tested. But there are teams that can test them, in specifically Team Liquid as that main rival for them. What you want to see is them push each other to make them and the rest of the region better.
Yeah, I like that we alluded, I think you said maybe a long time ago with that G2, right? You looked at what G2 did and how they innovated and how dominant they were and what that meant for the change in the LEC and what it meant to be a dominant team from the LEC. And now you've got Rogue, you got the Mad Lions, you got Schalke pushing through, you got Fnatic dying on the side of the road. We got Vitality gearing up and everything else. The LEC is a very different place due to the dominance and supremacy that G2 established. Cloud9 has an opportunity to do the same. They have that level of skill. They have the elite talent. Hopefully for themselves, they can let alone capitalize on that. But speaking for North America, that's what we'd love to see.
That's what we'd love to see, but that's it for Power Rankings. Eric and Mark here with you guys as always. Thanks for hanging, and we'll catch you on the Flippity Flip.